let's start with the challenges that Senator Ekweremadu is having in the U.S., being a U.S. attorney. What are the implications of that development?
Well, actually, he's in the United Kingdom, in London. So the challenge here is twofold. One, Nigeria, unfortunately, and Nigerians have a rather challenging reputation internationally, bordering on corruption, fraud, and scandalous activities. Whether it is rightfully such a reputation is rightly earned or unfairly earned, it is there. So when you have a situation where a person like Senator Ekweremadu gets into the legal system, it becomes very challenging for him. The issue of transporting a person, the allegation is that the person is a minor, from Nigeria to the United Kingdom for the purpose of organ harvesting. We've not established all the facts yet, but it's very, very challenging when that is done.
Magistrate Court, I think the case is before the Uxbridge Magistrate Court.
Yes, the central theme here is that you cannot promise someone remunerations or pay someone for any part of their body, for body parts. That's wrong. You can't have a minor donate organs to anyone as well. So, and you can't compel someone to do so. He's innocent until found guilty. Yeah. I mean, there are some facts that have come out that the person involved, the alleged victim, is 20 or 21 years old. It's not really been established by the court. We'll leave that for the court system to establish what is true and what is false. But what it does tell me, and it should tell Nigerians...
Is that the guy was just trying to be smart, seeking asylum instead of aligning with his own part of bargaining?
Well, therein lies the challenge. Let's take it that he is 15 years as some claim, and as he claims as well. Let's take it that he's 15 years. Statutorily, that is against the law. Let's move and say that Senator Ekweremadu is correct and he is 20 years or 21 years of age. Now, for the Crown Court to be able to establish criminal conduct on the part of Senator Ekweremadu, they have to show that he did promise the young man something, and then before the young man moved from Nigeria to the United Kingdom. Even if you promise the young man residency in the United Kingdom, you've committed a crime. The rules around organ donation is so restrictive and so tight for obvious reasons. One of them being that you don't want people to walk on the street and catch people and kill them and then harvest organs from them. So generally, what is permissible is that it's a concentric circle. You have to get members of your family first to donate. And if none of your family members does match, then you have to go into the public system to wait for a matching donor. If you have someone that actually volunteers, that person still has to go into the public system to wait along before you can be given a treatment, an organ transplant. So you can't just go to your village, get someone and have them remove one of their kidneys and donate to you or to some other person. That would be a violation of the law in the United Kingdom. There are some jurisdictional issues, and those jurisdictional issues led to the prosecution saying they have to get the consent of the Attorney General before they can proceed with the prosecution. But the prosecution will proceed. The jurisdiction issues are generally that part of the crime was committed in a foreign land, that foreign land being in the jurisdiction of Nigeria, and part of it now was supposed to be committed in the United Kingdom.
And what's so difficult in granting him bail on recognition as a former Deputy Senate President?
He was Deputy Senate President in Nigeria. He's really actually nothing but an ordinary citizen in the United Kingdom. And actually, the Crown Court is very correct to deny him bail, and will probably proceed in denying him bail for a very long time. Remember, there was that issue of the gentleman that wore women's clothes to run back to Nigeria a couple of years ago. I don't want to go into the identity of the person, but we know that he was a former governor and he was held in the UK court and he surfaced in Nigeria. That has taught the British a lesson to be very, very cautious because of flight risk. Senator Ekweremadu is a flight risk. He's not a citizen, to the best of my knowledge, he's not a citizen of the United Kingdom. If he was, he wouldn't be a Senate deputy leader. He wouldn't even be in the Senate. You can't have dual citizenship in that regard. So if you let him go off, he might actually take flight. Him and his wife are the ones that are facing charges in this matter. So it's best that they be remanded in the penal system in the United Kingdom. Let them stay there. And
well, let's see what happens. Well, let the court decide.
That's the ultimate thing. We have to remember that he is innocent until proven guilty.
Yes, away from Ekweremadu's case. Coming back to Ekiti elections. Lessons from Ekiti election, the Electoral Act Amendment Bill was passed into law, and of course, you see the sections of the Act play out during the elections. Elections from Center for Democratic Development and election observer, they scored the elections very high, about 87% in terms of organization and in terms of strategic arrangement. It's far better than the previous elections that we used to have, but not leaving out some shortcomings which the Independent Electoral Commission will have to do something about it.
Well, not just Independent National Electoral Commission that will have to do something about it. Politicians have to do something about it. The law enforcement agencies, most significantly, have to do something about it. Let's start with what obtains in other countries. In other countries, no matter how advanced that country is, let's take the United States, for example, there is still voter suppression, intimidation, and oppression, and removal of voters' names from the registered roll. So that does happen. You'll expect to see some kind of voter suppression and oppression and intimidation in almost every election in any part of the world. It's just normal. But we have to reduce it. Did it happen in Ekiti? Yes. Was it to such a high degree that would be troubling to some of us? To some people, yes. To some others, no. When we talk about even violence, let's take a look at our elections in 1998, 1999 that brought the regime of former President Olusegun Obasanjo into power. There was a lot of violence. Nobody really wanted to get involved in the political process. Even at the point of the internal democratic nomination process of the political parties, there was a lot of violence, a lot of killing, a lot of snatching of ballot boxes, a lot of injuries.
But in this case, was highly reduced.
In this case, let's even
technology.
Yes, let's even just go back to just the nomination process. We didn't have any meaningful, reportable level of violence in Ekiti or anywhere in the country in the last nomination process for the political parties. And in this particular instance in Ekiti, we didn't have any meaningful or reported violence. That is a plus. Actually, let me make that an A++ for us in Nigeria here, because we've moved from the violent demonstration of democracy to the intellectual demonstration of democracy. Unfortunately, there were some shortcomings. One of them, of course, was intimidation. The presence of police, the presence of civil defense, the presence of military actually does intimidate people. The day of election should not look like it's a militarization of the populace. It should look like a day that people go to work, and if they decide to leave work and go and vote, they do so expeditiously and go back to work. Or if they want to take the day off, they should go ahead and take the day off and go to work. That part of voter intimidation was there. Now, the most painful part of it all, and the most obvious, and the one that floated around the internet the most, was vote buying. It's actually against the law to buy votes, for the candidates to buy votes. And it's against the law. It's there in the...
But the anti-graft agencies were there, the EFCC and the ICPC. Well, I think they played a major role now to reduce the activities of politicians in that direction.
The presence of those law enforcement agencies
I see it
helped.
as an innovation. It never used to be.
Well, we used to have it, probably not at the same degree and level that we did see at Ekiti. But keep in mind that Ekiti is a state, so we were able to deploy as many law enforcement officers as possible. Same way that the nation suppressed violence in Anambra state elections. The same modus operandi was applied in Ekiti. But what was highlighted in Ekiti was the issue of open and brazen buying and selling of votes. Even some were selling votes for as much as 10,000 naira. And it goes to show that our votes do count, and voters' cards are relevant. So when I talk about suppression of votes, of voters, it starts from the registration point. And when you hear people say, our votes don't count, my vote won't count, so there is no reason for me to even go and get a PVC, a permanent voters card. That is part of the strategy of our political class to suppress voter registration, so that only those that they believe will vote for them from the section of the state or the country or the local government or region that they have their greatest support from are the ones that they really encourage to go out and get registered. But no, our votes do count. That's why it's costing a whole lot. The more we improve in terms of technology, the more you get to see people are willing to pay for the votes of individuals. And this is expressly prohibited.
Is it because of the electronic transmission of results from the units, which is a very good innovation?
Yes, it does start with the BVAS, the bimodal verification accreditation system. It does start from there. So you have the biometric accreditation if the card fails, or the card reader as well, being used for accreditation. And then the electronic transmission, you can see the results at the polling units at that low level. You can see the results as it's being announced and as it's being collated. So the chain of custody for the result is much more transparent. It used to be that the returning officer for that polling unit or for that area suddenly disappears with the election results, and you're still looking for him, and suddenly the results are announced somewhere in the mountaintop, and you have to take that result or you leave that result. The only recourse was to violence, but as people began to develop more intellectually, the recourse was to go to court. But now, with the level of transparency that is shown in the process, what you're going to see is one, what we've seen is one, a reduction in the level of violence, and two, you're going to see a meaningful reduction in the litigation that takes place immediately after the primaries and that takes place immediately after the general elections.
Yes, a very important point here, which really bothers me, is the voter apathy, because on record it is about 37.74% of registered voters who came out to vote during the elections. 37%, it is not a pass mark.
It certainly is a failure. I don't know for Ekiti what the trend has been, but what I will simply say is that all over the world, off-season elections typically have a low level in terms of voting. Voters typically come out when the presidential cycle is at play, but they tend not to come out when it's just off-season, like a state having elections such as Ekiti or a state such as Anambra. If you want to keep in mind that a lot of people did not even see or have Ekiti on the horizon, it kind of played under the radar because everybody focused on the party primaries, whereas they had already had their own primaries. And then because they were consumed, we were all consumed with the party primaries. After the primaries, we were startled with, oh, Ekiti has an election. And typically, most Nigerians with the bad experience of violence during the elections tend to stay home. And with the refrain that politics is a dirty game, people tend to stay back from participating in their civic duty. And with the fact that people tend to kind of refer to election day as a day of violence. People tend to stay back. So now what we need to do is for the political parties as well as the Independent National Electoral Commission, along with the law enforcement agencies, along with every interested and involved politician, to encourage people to come out and vote and exercise their civic duty. Look, we already have a department in the Ministry of Information that is supposed to do this, and is tasked with doing this. And it has offices in every local government area of the Federation, and that the agency is the National Orientation Agency. I don't know, maybe because of funding, maybe because of ill planning, maybe because of lack of political will, whatever it might be, it's not doing its job in this regard in terms of one, advising people, yes, sensitizing people in terms of don't sell your vote, go ahead and get your PVC, make sure you maintain your PVC, transfer the point of registration if you move to a different place, and come out and vote. This is the responsibility of the National Orientation Agency. But I'm glad to say that I see most civil organizations stepping into the gap and encouraging people to come out and register. The registration drive that we've experienced in the last 1 or 2 months is going to affect the Ekiti elections as well. Maybe in the next cycle, which should be in 2026, you'll see that more people will register, and with the registration of more people, you're going to see that more people will come out to vote, because the violence, there was basically no violence reported in Ekiti in the last elections. It gives people the timidity, the effrontery, the boldness to step out and say, I'm going to exercise my civic duty.
Well, after the break, you can join the conversation with the phone lines you see on the screen. Now, we are looking at Ekiti elections and the impact on future polls. And of course, I have in the house, Attorney Archibong, Mendie Archibong, a good governance advocate here in the house. So join us after the break.
Welcome to the rule of the majority, a government in which the supreme power is vested in the people and supervised through a system of representation. Democracy belongs to the people. Political Trail follows these developments and many more. Political Trail, trailing political developments.
Yes, let me come back to you. As an attorney,
Yes.
the impact of the new Electoral Act 2022, the innovations it has built in the elections, and of course, your own reservations. What are those things that you believe should have boosted the elections more? And what are those things that you believe has seen that has really improved on the electoral process?
Well, regardless of where you stand, we must commend this administration for what it has done in terms of the electoral process. It has been better streamlined. We may not agree with everything, but we are improving in every election cycle. I don't believe in 2019 we did see any measurable escalation of violence. Rather, violence was reduced. With the primaries being concluded in 2022, we've not experienced any meaningful and reportable violence in any of the primaries. And that, to a great extent, is because the transparency of the process. The Electoral Act of 2022 has brought out some level of innovation, and that is the application of technology. When you apply technology, you solve a lot of problems, but you also create some problems because we are still a growing and developing country. So this technology will be a little bit challenging in terms of application. But with the bimodal verification accreditation system, it has solved a lot of things. One of the things it has not solved, but I do believe that we are going to get there, has been the registration of underage persons for the purpose of voting for certain candidates. That has been addressed in the Electoral Act of 2022 directly. So we are going to have the prosecution, hopefully, the prosecution of people that are underage or who aid in the registration of underage persons. The other thing is the issue of vote buying and the issue of vote selling. Any of those acts, the buying or the selling, will attract 500,000 naira fine or a jail term of 12 months. Therefore, it means the 500,000 naira fine and or the 12 months jail term. It's just not worthwhile to accept an inducement of 10,000 naira and face a fine of 500,000. And if you are the one doing the inducement, you stand the risk of disqualification from the whole process as well, and that will preclude you from running in that instance and also running in the future, because if you are found guilty, it's a felony, it's not a misdemeanor. If you are found guilty, you can run for an elective position in the Federation of Nigeria as well. But it also did bring about the contentious issue of Section 84, subsection 12, which speaks to political appointees acting as delegates or running for nomination during the primaries. I believe that will be litigated. There's been some level of litigation, but we've not really dealt with the substantial issue in that regard, because with the case that was instituted by the Attorney General of the Federation, Malami, and Buhari against the National Assembly to have that section removed, the Supreme Court did speak, and it spoke kind of quietly, because it spoke on the issue of jurisdiction. Jurisdiction speaks to power. Do I have the power to make this decision? It's like your neighbor's children coming to you and to tell you that Daddy doesn't allow me to drive his car. Do you have the power to kind of sit down and make that determination if the children should be able to drive the car? You really don't have that kind of power and authority. Even if you were the grandparents, you don't.
And they also mentioned that the president had earlier assented to the bill. And you cannot assent and now challenge what you assented.
That was one of the arguments of the National Assembly, and also one of the arguments of Rivers State. But the Supreme Court never got to that argument. It simply said, we don't have the jurisdiction because the president is not a natural plaintiff, and the Attorney General is not a natural plaintiff. A natural plaintiff would be a person that is directly affected by that section, and there is no one that is directly affected by that section that actually did institute the case. The original plaintiff actually was not affected, was just a person that said, hey, I'm interested in this, and instituted a case, which the Attorney General then jumped on the bandwagon to pursue vigorously. So now that the Supreme Court has said there is no jurisdiction, hopefully some other person that has been affected, I don't see anyone that has been affected so far. A lot of people did step down at the federal level and at the state level. But in the future, if somebody is so directly affected, then they become a natural plaintiff, and they can go ahead and sue the Independent National Electoral Commission or the National Assembly and see if they will win. I can't cast my vote for either section, for either the plaintiff or the defendant, but I can say that these lawsuits refine our political process, and in refining our political process, it makes us better democratically. In making us better democratically, it means that we begin to enjoy the dividends of democracy. And if we begin to enjoy the dividends of democracy in terms of the dividends trickling down to us, it stabilizes democracy in our country, it strengthens the institution of democracy, and it moves even our economy and our social development forward.
Now, as a good governance advocate, deployment of the BVS and the IRV, and of course, the innovations brought in by INEC, bringing in anti-graft agencies, and of course, doing all what it takes to ensure that there is sanity in the system. We are moving to Osun state elections in July. What are those things that you believe should be put in place?
Well, having the EFCC, ICPC, Nigerian Police Force, Nigerian Navy, Nigerian military, Army and Air Force out in place on the election day in full force is not going to stop a lot of the corrupt practices. What needs to happen is, look, if you suspect a candidate, and I can tell you that the law enforcement agencies do know more than I do and do have access to a lot more than I do have access to as a citizen. And that's how it should be. But if you do see a candidate being alleged to be buying votes on that day, at the very least, you begin to look at the financial records of this candidate to see where is this money coming from and where is this money going to. If you want to stop a crime in progress, if you really want to stop such a widespread crime, such as buying of votes, which is the main problem now, it's not going to be the presence of EFCC at Eagle Square on nomination day or the presence of EFCC or ICPC, Osun on the day of election. It's going to be having probable cause to get a search warrant on the financial banking system of the major players to see where they are getting the money from and where this money is going to. If you follow the money, you solve at least 99% of the crimes in the whole wide world. Just follow the money, especially now that we have a banking system and very few people do have cash. If I hold you and turn you upside down right now, I bet you won't have 2,000 naira come out of your pocket because most of the time you do your transactions electronically by your banking app. A lot of people are doing these transactions electronically. Look at the large withdrawals within the country. It's somebody that is withdrawing 50,000 naira, 20,000, 100,000 every other day, suddenly withdraws 200 million naira. I mean, of course, you have to follow the trail of that money and say, okay, where is this money coming from and where is this money going to? Because there is now probable cause. It's not a monitoring system on Nigerians, but it is a way of making sure, ensuring that there is integrity, there is fair play, financial fair play within the Federation of Nigeria and specifically within the electoral process and most significantly amongst the people that are candidates and aspiring to a certain political position.
Now, you've spoken about an electronic transfer. What if the politicians devise a strategy of collecting the bank accounts of registered voters within a particular unit and start transferring this money rather than move to election venue?
Well, that makes it even that makes it even easier for the anti-graft agencies to do their work. You follow the money. There's going to be one source wherein the money goes out. If you have money leaving the bank account of a politician or an associate of a politician and is going to 40,000 people, it's going to speak a lot in terms of the intention of that politician, whether it is good intention or poor intention. It's not only money. Even the inducement of a job, even the inducement of a contract, even the inducement of being moved from Nigeria, one section of Nigeria to another section, even the inducement of being taken out of the country to obtain a visa and go to another, any form of inducement that makes a person to vote other than the way he would have voted but for the inducement is a criminal act under the Electoral Act of 2022, specifically under Section 121. All through that section speaks about the act of inducement and the act of receiving. All of them, we are looking at 12 months in jail, and it's really not worth it.
I think Independent Electoral Commission is trying to do everything possible to ensure that a lot of Nigerians get registered this time. And just yesterday, we had a voter registration concert by the youths trying to sensitize eligible registered voters to go out and get themselves registered. It's like Nigerians are more informed now. 2023 elections may not be like other elections. A lot of people are really building up, looking forward to the election. What's your take?
This continuing voter registration started about 11 months ago, and this June would mark the end of that exercise. I think Sarah actually obtained a court order that extends this by 60 days. But INEC has, I believe, a court date on the 29th of June to come and establish why the date should not be extended for 2 more months, 60 days, for people to continue to register. Has INEC done a fantastic job in sensitizing people in terms of voter registration? I would say no, because 11 months ago, did you hear about registration? I didn't hear much about
online.
it. It was online.
It was online.
But it was not there for people to hear as much as they are hearing now. There are many ways that we can begin the process of registering people quietly. You go to renew your license, you have the option there. You go to get a new license, you have the option there. The driver's license I'm talking about. You go to register your vehicle, you have the option there. You go to renew your vehicle registration, you have your option there. Those are tied in because it concerns documentation that you'll need to renew your license or need to obtain a new license. All those documentations, you can use them at the same time to register for a PVC. So now you even go to government hospitals, university teaching hospitals, you go to buy a card, well, you have the option of registering for a PVC. Anytime you make contact with the federal government, you should have that option of being registered for your PVC. That did not really happen. What you're hearing now is the youth organizing concerts, civil society organizations stepping up, churches stepping up, mosques stepping up, individuals stepping up to fill in the gap in terms of sensitizing the youths. This is what the political parties should also be engaged in. We had that engagement as Nigeria for Democracy where in 2018 and before the registration was closed. So political parties should also step into the gap and ensure that they bring out as many people as possible for the registration. But INEC was caught unawares because about a month ago, people were complaining of the long lines, people were complaining of the faulty registration equipments, people were complaining of inadequate equipments, people were complaining of inadequate trained personnel. So they now had to ramp up all of these things, resources in terms of trained personnel and in terms of the equipment to be able to meet the demand. So there was a gap between the demand and the supply, the capability of INEC to meet this sudden rush for registration. But thankfully, they've really stepped on in this regard.
Now, a few weeks from now, we are going to have the Osun governorship election. And of course, from the experience gathered during the Ekiti elections, which to some extent, INEC has recorded a pass mark in that elections. And what are those things that you believe that should be put in place?
Oh, it's very simple. Ensure that vote buying and vote selling is reduced to the minimum. Once we get vote buying and vote selling out of the way, what will now happen is people will begin to vote their conscience. And when people begin to vote their conscience, you're going to have a different outcome. Because if I were to tell you, here, this is 100,000 naira. I have three persons here. One can actually fly a plane, is trained to fly a plane, is capable to fly a plane. That's Mr. 1. Mr. 2, well, he says he can fly a plane. I don't know much about that. Mr. 3 has flown a helicopter once in his life, but I don't know if he's flown this plane. But here is 100,000 naira. Go ahead and choose one. You would definitely choose the person that knows how to fly the plane. The money will not be an inducement. Now, so when you remove that money, common sense begin to take place in the decision-making process of the voters involved in this instance. And the results will be very different when money is at play. So hopefully we can remove the inducement of money, the influence of money, the distortion of the election process and result with the influx of money into the election process. Once we remove that, we are now going to deal with the removal of voter suppression, removal of voter intimidation. And once we remove that, we've already removed violence. We'll remove the presence of military personnel. There is no longer going to be a need for a show of force or a crocodile dance or for acrobatic bumunkuku appearance. There's not going to be any need for that. It's just going to be a normal day where people go out to vote and they return to their work or to their homes peacefully, and they vote their conscience, because we've come to the critical point of, if you keep on voting in stomach infrastructure, you're going to have the same result of the decadence that we do have in the society today. If somebody is paying 10,000 naira for one vote and 1 million people vote, that's a lot of money. Why would they pay so much money except they want to go in there and steal our resources? There is nobody on earth that is so kind, that is so nice, that will give away 10,000 naira just to come and serve the people of the Federation of Nigeria, or specifically in this instance, Ekiti or Osun State. No, they're not that nice. They are simply saying, hey, there is gold at the end of this rainbow, and I'm going to pay you this amount of money so I can get to that goal. And when I get to that goal, guess what will happen? I will take it all for myself, because you've already received your reward before I get to that goal. And really, people can no longer complain if they have sold their conscience by taking money, collecting bribes, in order to vote in a specific candidate. How will you complain? You've already been paid. The contract has already been signed. The contract was, hey, put me in there. Here is 10,000 naira for you. Yes, you put that person in there. But when you vote your conscience, what you're essentially doing is, what are your policies, Mr. Politician? What are your goals and objectives? What are your desires for the people of the state of Osun or Ekiti or the Federation of Nigeria? Now, I will hold you to account if you don't implement those policies. I will hold you to account by actually holding town hall meetings, actually writing letters to your constituents, actually challenging you on the radio, in the newspaper, on TV, and actually making sure that you don't succeed in the next political cycle because you've not performed. When you have that, you're going to have the very best come out. But it begins with one thing. If we say that politics is for thugs and ruffians and the decadence of the society, guess who will rule us? Thugs and the ruffians and the decadence of the society. So it simply means that everybody, including the person watching on television, should actually go out and vote or be voted for. There are two ways one can run in this thing. There is the political platform and there is the governance platform. But when we have the best of the best coming out to run for elections, we are going to have a meaningful result. And that result is going to lead to the improvement of our society, to the improvement of the institution of democracy. You're not going to have people building statutes and accrediting themselves that their achievement is the building of statutes, or abandoning old projects and building up new projects for the simple reason that they want to be disdainful of the person that was in the position that they presently occupy. There is going to be a continuance in governance, because intelligent people, because people that have sympathy and empathy for the people of the Federation of Nigeria are now in power. When you look at the exploits of Nigerians outside of Nigeria, you are impressed. But when you look at the exploits of Nigerians within Nigeria, you are saddened by what you see. Now we have to begin to play at an international playing level and field, so that we can begin to grow as a federation and grow together as one.
Yes, as we are rounding up, can we say now that the same thing happening now will happen in the general elections? You know, what we are experiencing now is a staggered election. And can you say that INEC can record this level of success in a general election arrangement?
Well, what I would say is you begin, if someone has shown a record and a history of successful implementation of ideas, at least give them credit for the future, give them leeway. INEC did fantastically well in Anambra elections. It was a very challenging terrain. It was a potentially violent place. I mean, about 2 or 3 weeks before then, certain groups were saying over their dead body there won't be any elections. But yes, we lost some people in that election, but it was a success all round. Now, Ekiti election has gone under the radar. It has been a successful outing for INEC. It is not their responsibility to arrest people for vote buying and vote selling. It is the responsibility of the law enforcement agents. Now, INEC should and has the power to request for law enforcement agents in the number that they believe will be appropriate for the conduct of the elections. Now, these law enforcement agencies do not need to be charged in order to go ahead and end the issue of vote buying and vote selling. It is their responsibility to do so. But absent this vote buying, we now see that INEC has been doing well. Could it improve? Yes. How could it improve? It could monitor the internal democratic process of the political parties a lot more closely, so we don't have the issue of people being forced to step down for others, so that we don't have the issue of anointed successors, so that we don't have the issue of people being told there are no primaries, and when they get home they hear the result of the primaries at 2 a.m., which has happened in some states of the Federation. INEC has the authority to monitor, not to tell the parties what to do, but to monitor. And actually, if there is an infraction of the electoral law, it does have the power to actually highlight this infraction, mete out the appropriate punishment. If the political party doesn't agree with the punishment, it can go to the Federal High Court.
Now, thank you very much.